Welcome to Copacabana Beach. There's sand, there's beach, there's football, and there's Mr. Football, Tim Vickery himself. We've captured him in Rio, saw him walking down the street, and he said, hey, can we have a chat over a beer? He said, why not? Oh, soft drink actually. So, Tim, let's kick it off. The Confederations Cup. You been enjoying it so far?
I think it's surpassed everyone's expectations. I think it's been a terrific tournament, but more significant are the things that have happened off the field. So, to be a journalist, this is, this is heaven, because there are so many things to write, think and reflect about. We've had great football and a country changing before our eyes.
History before our eyes, yeah. Saying, you speak about the tournament surpassing expectations. Do you mean performances on the pitch, quality of play?
I think we haven't had a bad game. And obviously Tahiti, but even Tahiti was fun because that was your fantasy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You're watching these great players and you're thinking, me and my mates are in a pub team. How would we get on? We'd be able to do all right, ain't that good old? And then you see what is really a kind of pub team out there.
Just what Iniesta could do to a semi-pro.
So even that had its charm. Tournaments have their own dynamic, they have their own rhythm. I'll give you an example of Brazil. Now, Brazil, in this political moment that we're living, there's been a real bond between the team and the crowd. And this thing of singing the national anthem, when the 90 seconds of the FIFA music stops, and then the fans, then it's a cappella, the fans singing. That doesn't happen normally. That's happening because of the political moments. And you saw in the games against Mexico and Italy, you saw how it really inspired the team. And Brazil came out of the blocks, bang, first 15 against Mexico, bang, first 15 against Italy. And part of this, and the players were talking about this afterwards, that they were really inspired by the mood in the stadium.
It's a good point you made about the a cappella. I got to go to the third and fourth game of Brazil in this tournament.
That's Italy and Uruguay.
Italy and Uruguay. The first one I didn't see coming. I didn't know about the a cappella. When it came, I was filming at the time, and it just took me back. It really did. Second time I was used to it. I thought I would be ready for it. I wasn't. I started tearing up. I had a bit of Brazilian in me. You'd see Victoria and Bahia fans sitting next to each other. They wore their jerseys, but they sang together. They were united together. You wouldn't so much see that in Europe. I mean, it happens, but in Brazil, I still get a sense that everyone. There's not a loyalty of a club, it's equal. Everyone loves the national team. The national team, every 4 years, they run in the tournament, represents them to the world.
No, football makes people, it has a power to represent people that no other sport has.
And the World Cup in such an international way, it's just...
Well, it's like a United Nations for the common man. I love looking down the team at the time of the national anthems. So I love looking at the faces, because then you're seeing the faces of the nation. You're seeing the faces of the working class. And obviously, the people in the streets in the 32 countries that are in the World Cup, the people are looking at their team and feeling represented through them. And I think that gives the World Cup a special power.
Well, I often had this argument with my mates, what's more important, the World Cup or the Champions League or the EPL, La Liga? And it always comes back to this for me. You can be signed to another club tomorrow, for a bit of money, for another championship, try something different. But when you play international, that's the country on your passport. That's your nationality. That's where you're born, and you can't change it. It's more than about themselves. It's about showing the city that they grew up in, proving it to the people that they knew from a young age.
That's it. Sometimes it's almost contradictory sometimes because the player, the camera is on him as it pans down for the national anthem, and the player is thinking. And part of it is, I've triumphed. Part of it is, all right, I'm really happy to be representing all of you. But part of it is, that teacher who said I'd be nothing. Yeah. That girl who snubbed me because I was poor. Look at me now.
I'm representing all of us to the world.
That's it.
How much progress do you think Brazil have made, in the fans' opinion, with their performance this tournament?
I think they've come on in leaps and bounds. I think they've achieved so many of the objectives that Scolari had. And one of those objectives was absolutely vital. Win over the fans.
Yeah.
Because Brazil fans, they can really turn against the team. I don't know if you've seen it in a couple of Brazil games that you were at, but they can be very quiet as well. And there are moments of just, and that moment when Julio Cesar saved a penalty against Uruguay, that breaks your eardrums. But there are also moments when the crowd can go very, very quiet, and moments when the crowd can turn against the team. So one of his objectives going into this tournament is to ensure next year, when it really matters, that home advantage is not home disadvantage.
Yes.
So they've been around the country, they've played in a few cities, and they're building that bond with the supporters. That's really, really important. Also, I think in football terms, and this month was always vital, because this June 2013, it's the big month that Scolari has had with his players. What he wanted to do was come out of this month with a team, with a squad, but also with a team and an idea of play. In many ways, there's been a continuation from what the previous coach, Manuel Menezes, did. It was Manuel Menezes who introduced lots of these players to the national team, from Oscar, Neymar, even David Luiz. Lots of these players were Manuel Menezes players.
Yes.
And Menezes was the first one to get Brazil marking high, as they did in the first few minutes against Mexico, so the first few minutes against Italy. So Scolari has carried on from that. But he's also made significant changes right down the spine of the team. It wasn't clear who the goalkeeper was going to be. Brought back Julio César, did that. Another thing that he did, the friendly against England, the 2-2 that they played at the start of the month, was crucial for this. Luis Gustavo was a holding midfielder. You remember that friendly? Brazil on top in the first half, without creating that much. Second half, he went for it. He took off Luis Gustavo, who was tired anyway from his trip from Germany, and he went with a more attacking midfield. It got him 2 goals, but they conceded 2 goals in that space in front of the back 4. So that, in Scolari's mind, that cemented the idea of, we are going to play with a holding midfielder, and it's going to be Luis Gustavo. And the centre forward, Fregi. Menezes, the previous coach, last year, he'd ended up playing a system without a centre forward. No way would Scolari do the same thing. He loves his target man number 9. So that was the first thing he did, right from the game against England at Wembley in February. Brought back the centre forward. It was Luis Fabiano the first half. Fregi came on the second half, scored the goal, and Fregi has been scoring goals ever since. Yes. So that spine of the team, with his goalkeeper, his holding midfielder, his centre forward, along with the key players in the team, Thiago Silva, who's the captain and spreads so much confidence throughout that defensive line, and Neymar, who's come on just in the course of this tournament. Not all of the question marks are removed, but some of them are, and the world has seen that he is a real talent.
I questioned him before I saw him live, and after watching him, I've got a few queries over his diving. He goes down a bit too easy, but when he's got the ball and he wants to turn it on, watch out the next few years.
So he's consolidated himself as an international player in the course of this tournament.
Yes.
And so have the team. So in comparison with where they were a month ago, now let's remember, after that 2-2 draw against England, Brazil hadn't beaten a top-ranking side, a side that Brazil consider to be a serious opponent, since 2009. So that was a long, long run. Now they took that monkey off their back a week before the Confederations Cup when they beat France 3-0 in Porto Alegre. So they've got rid of that, and they've come on so much further since then. So I think Scolari now will be looking at the World Cup and thinking, we're much more ready now than we were a month ago.
Now, on the pitch, Brazil played some great football, proved a lot of people wrong, left a lot of happy faces in the stadium. Once you leave, once you get out there, not so happy faces. There's no denying it, there's unrest here. People aren't happy with a lot that's going on with Brazil, and a lot of that has to do with the FIFA World Cup and the Confederations Cup that are going on at the moment. In your own words, what's happening?
Well, in one word, what's happening is history. And these are amazing times. No one saw this coming. No one saw it coming, and no one really knows how it's going to play out. And the word that the authorities have most used, I think, is perplexed, because they didn't see it coming. No, we've been living a boom. What's the problem? And I think the problem, well, it started small. It was a specific demonstration about public transport in São Paulo. And it went wild all over the country. And it became a general feeling of dissatisfaction of the Brazilian citizen towards the treatment that he gets from the Brazilian state. Not just the Brazilian government, but the Brazilian state in general. Shoddy public transport, shoddy education, shoddy health, shoddy public security. We're paying a lot of taxes and we ain't getting what we should back from it. The people in their early 20s now, they've seen huge changes in Brazil in the last 10 years. So they know that change is possible.
And from around the world.
Yes, and they're also a plugged-in internet generation. So they know that change is possible.
Exactly.
They want to see more of it, and they want to see it now. So it's totally different from the image that Brazil had of itself before all this, was of a country where people are resigned and apathetic, and they'll put up with bad treatment from the government, and that's the way it is, and that's the way it'll always be.
Facilities, poor.
A new generation are saying no, and that's really, really interesting. And this new generation, it's great. It's really, really positive. This new generation are feeling their power. In 2007, Brazilian society was explicitly told that all of the money spent on stadiums will be private money, leaving public money for the infrastructure projects. As it's worked out, almost all of the money to be spent on stadiums is public money.
How much is that? Are we talking? How much is that?
I'm not very good with figures.
It goes into tens of millions?
It goes into billions. In
billions?
Yeah. I mean, the total cost of
public money?
Yes. The total cost of staging the World Cup is now, they announced it during the Confederations Cup, now 28 billion PH, which is a bit less than 10 billion pounds.
Is that exclusively on stadiums or on
public? No, that's the whole caboodle.
That's money that FIFA doesn't contribute towards.
No, see, this is the other part of the problem. So one part of it is domestic decisions. The other part is the context of the agreement between FIFA and the host nation. And it's especially in the developing world where there are so many other competing priorities for public spending. I think this is something where we need a rethink. We need a debate about this. And one of the really positive things, I think, there are so many positive things about the street demonstrations, but one of the positive things is that these youngsters, as well as changing Brazil, I think they might end up changing international football as well, because their protests are bringing more heat and bringing more spotlight on this relationship. So it does mean, I think, this should force an international debate on this issue.
Can we find a medium? Can we make the people of Brazil happy, and can we still have a World Cup that will, you and I both know, be the World Cup of the decade, of the century, I should say?
There's one of my favourite phrases. It's an expression I picked up in Brazil. Of all the unimportant things in life, football is the most important. Which means that it's great, but it's not more important than health and education and public transport and so on. So I hope we can find a balance. But the battle to do that in Brazil, I think, is lost because we're too far down the road. So the blunders that have been made on the road to being where we are in Brazil, hopefully they're avoided in future times.
Thank you so much for your time, Tim.
My pleasure.
It's been a pleasure talking to you. We could do this for hours, I'm sure, but I'm sure you've got some beach volleyball or foot volleyball to play.
I've been neglecting my girlfriend. Tournament life is like that, so you know.
That's why you got to be single, man. You got to choose single or football. You can't have both. Thank you again.